Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Doomed Productions podcast, a podcast hosted by Doomed Productions. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jordan.
And this is just a spot where we get to hang out, chat about films, filmmaking, kind of go on an extended discussion or conversation about topics that we think are interesting, and hopefully you guys find interesting too. Last week, we were talking about movies and filmmakers that we thought were great to learn from as a filmmaker. So if you want to check that out, listen to that. I also have a whole playlist of other podcast episodes. So
new episodes every Friday.
Every Friday we put out a new one of these. So you should, if this is something you're into, we got a whole library for you to check out. And just to give you kind of a rundown of how these podcasts flow, if you're new to this, we discuss this, but then we also talk about movies we're watching, and we also talk about things we're working on, projects and feature films. But this week, after that long intro, we wanted to talk a bit about screenwriting, and specifically, Jordan.
Yes.
You have written quite a few screenplays.
I've lost count.
Yeah.
But since middle school.
Since middle school, you've been writing screenplays.
Yes, since middle school. And I am, how old am I?
You're 26.
26. Yes, 26.
Yeah, you're 26. I have written one feature-length screenplay.
No, you've written more than that, right?
I've written one feature-length screenplay, all the way through, from start to finish.
And that was The Bell Rings?
And that was The Bell Rings.
Oh my gosh, wow. No, that's not right. No.
I've written
others. No.
I've written shorts. I've written lots of shorts. I've worked on feature-length screenplays. Like in film school, I had a screenwriting course, and I took that. But that only took you through your first 20 pages of a screenplay.
That's the easiest part to write when you're starting out.
I know, it really is.
Oh my goodness.
It really is.
Wow.
That all to say, I've not written anything more than that.
You've only written The Bell Rings?
I've only written The Bell Rings because House didn't have a script. It had an outline.
Yeah.
A very, very loose beat sheet. I mean, I guess, yeah, and Wild Boys, we work on as a group, and there's no script. It's all outline and improv, so that's my only feature film
I feel like
script.
I should have known that. Maybe I did know it and I just forgot.
Well, whatever you did, it was very dramatic for this podcast, so thank you. Wow.
You have to, no, you would have. I remember other projects, though, that you worked on.
I've tried writing other feature scripts.
But you just didn't finish them?
I never finished them.
Okay.
Because I lacked the determination.
Well, let's just say then,
I'm an amateur screenwriter.
No, you have hundreds of pages, maybe 1,000 pages under your belt.
That's incredibly generous, but
just
okay.
Not under the same project.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
No, that was it.
Okay. So we're talking about screenwriting from the perspective of two people at two different points in their screenwriting journey, and kind of just talking about what's been helpful for us, what's good things that maybe other people who are starting out their screenwriting journey should know. Just general stories about screenwriting, I guess. We'll go all over the place. If you want, we have tangents all the time.
I guess a good place to start is explain where our relationship to writing. So what's when it comes to writing, either in general or just screenwriting, what is your, I don't want to get into habits or
because it's polar opposite between the two of us.
Well, no, but maybe habits. In general, what is your relationship to writing?
Newly discovered that I enjoy it.
Okay.
I guess is the right way to put it right now. Because up until The Bell Rings, I did screenwriting out of necessity to I have the story I want to tell. I needed to convey this to people outside of my own head. So this is how you do that. So that's what writing scripts or shorts or anything like that. And it was always something I've wanted to learn and something I wanted to get better at, but just always kind of got sidetracked. But during my process of The Bell Rings, I found I really enjoy it. Have I done that every day like I probably should? No. But it's something that during The Bell Rings, I kind of found okay, this is how you do it. This is what it feels like to write a script and finish that. And that was kind of something that stirred something in me that hadn't been stirred before.
And what was holding you back, do you think, from finishing a script before?
I think there's a lot of steps that go into making a script. It's not just I'm going to sit down and write a feature film and just go. I mean, maybe some people do that, but I think 99% of people don't. And so just like all the steps of like, all right, I need to have all the ideas, but I also need to have like an outline and maybe write a treatment or a kind of like a scriptment, which is where it's a kind of a not quite a script and not quite a outline or a treatment, like all these different things I feel like I just kind of always got lost in the maze of.
Yeah.
And then that ultimately just lets it burning out on it.
Yeah.
But in the Bell Rings, I did have help. Like I asked you specifically to help me with some of the outlining stuff, and we worked through that together. And getting through that part, I think, set me up well in the actual screenwriting part to work through it and push through.
Yeah.
So, yeah, doing it on my own, I think, was a difficult thing. But having someone to just kind of like encourage me through and sometimes carry me through, that was helpful.
I'm pretty comfortable. Well,
you helped a lot with the outlining process.
Yeah.
And you did do some help me with revising for the second draft.
Well, I wouldn't even say, like, I would say outlining, sure, I helped out. But I would also say that, for the most part, I didn't write any of the dialogue.
No.
Like, that was all you, with the exception of, like...
There were scenes that you came to set with.
But I didn't change those as a screenwriter. I changed those as an actor.
Yes. And I like gave you full permission to do that as well. Like as the actors, like you guys know the character.
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna, I gave you guys free reign to say like, no, this is like needs to change or this can try this way. I mean, don't say that aggressively, but
I wouldn't have shown up not as the actor, like a camera. I wouldn't have shown up as a camera and be like, okay, here's the rewrites. Like I wouldn't have done that. Like that's bad form. That's bad. It's a little rude.
Yeah.
I think. But I think the actors generally, I kind of agree with you. I think actors should,
you're stewards of the character.
Yeah, they should be able to change stuff if that's what feels right.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. For me, like I said, I've just been writing for a long time. Scripts since middle school, but longer than that. Like since grade school, I was always writing stuff in general. I wanted to be a writer because I read Lord of the Rings when I was like too little, I think. Like I was like
I was gonna say when you were 2.
No, like second grade or third, because I wanted to see the movies.
That's right.
My mom was like, "No, it's PG-13," because when you're the oldest kid, your mom cares about the rating system.
Yep.
And she was like, "No," but then my dad was like, "Okay, if you read the books, you can watch the movies." And so I devoured the books.
What a dad move.
Yeah, and my mom agreed to it. Apparently, it worked for her. So I read through all the books before I saw the movies.
Nice.
And then I was like, I'm probably somewhere reading Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. I was like, oh, I want to be a writer. And then I saw the movies. And I saw Pete Jackson's name come up after it was all over. I was like, never mind. I want to do that.
I want to be that guy.
Yeah. But I still always wrote. And so I've been writing for a long time. And I've developed a system that works for me. And I'm always trying to refine it and change it up. But writing is something that's not necessarily... I've always enjoyed it, but it's not like it's super easy necessarily every single time. I just have been doing it long enough. I have a system that works for me.
Yeah.
And I'm not by no means an expert, and no means like a good screenplay. Like I still don't think there's not a movie that I've made, like a feature film that I've made, that I think reflects like... I've never really been happy with any of my scripts that I've made into movies. It's always been kind of like, if you look at Oh Brother, it had to be written in a month because it had to be shot the following month. Because I think when we decided it was like 2 months away or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like, let's film something in June.
It was in beginning of May when I think you...
And it was May when I proposed the idea. I was like, okay, I have a month to write this script. I was like, okay. And so I kind of wrote it. And I was like, I knew it was going to be a little crappy, but I was like, here it is.
Yeah.
So I was never happy with that. October, similar situation. I was happy with it to an extent, but I don't think, I think it was written in August because I had to storyboard it in September. And I think if I'd thought about it more, I would have changed a lot more. And even looking back, there's parts of that I'm not entirely happy with. Same thing with Video Carnage. That I did have more time, but things were drastically rewritten a week before we started shooting, which is kind of a fun tidbit.
That's right. I kind of forgot about that.
The fact that it's cohesive, though, I'm happy with. But I wish there's not a lot of finesse. Like there's little things I'm like, oh, I should have changed that. Should have changed that. Should have added this moment in. All that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then so like all my scripts I've never totally been really happy with. Exactly. I can't remember how I got on that tangent. I guess that's my preface saying like I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I've never been happy with something that I've written.
But you've written a lot.
But I've written a lot, and I like to believe I'm getting better. Mm-hmm. I mean, I do have scripts that I'm like, that's a pretty good script, but they're just unfilmable at this level.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I actually went back to reread them, I'd probably be like, oh, I'd change this, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But if I had to put a number on it, I could probably actually look up. There is a cap on this, though. This is like, I probably could look at the last few years to see how many scripts I've written.
We're getting the number straight from the well here. Jordan's pulling out the laptop.
This isn't necessarily, let's see. Let me organize this by date, because that always helps. Date created. I'll do the list view, because it pops up the date. So, what's the old? No, date created. That's what I want. So, since 2019. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of these are shorter. Yeah. But I would say I'll say a solid 15. 15 scripts since 2019. And multiple drafts of each script, pretty much. Like, I'll usually go up to about draft 5 or draft 4 before I'm like, okay, I'll move on to another project or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, that was me over the last 2 years. So, yeah.
Some people read books, Jordan writes scripts.
Yeah. Some people read scripts and then they write books. But yes, I guess that's our very long preamble to, I guess, this discussion on screenwriting. And yeah, I guess, what should we talk about first?
Well, I'm sure...
What do you want to know, young grasshopper?
Oh, man.
I'm joking.
Do we want to go through this linearly and kind of talk about the process, or do we want to talk more tidbitty kind of stuff?
Well, we've talked about the process. So yeah. I guess I'll summarize my process. You can watch these videos on our channel. There's a screenwriting playlist. I still need to make some more videos for that because I've just kind of stopped.
Jordan really wants to make more of them.
And my process is I write a beat sheet, which is I would say approximately 9 sentences, where it's 3 per act, roughly, depending on if it has 3 acts or not. Approximately 9 sentences of what happens in the movie. Mm-hmm. Then I move on to an outline, which is fleshing out even further, where it's, a lot more than 9. It's more like broader.
You have events.
More specific, gets into the more, here's what happens. Mm-hmm. And then I get in, from there I take it to the scriptment, which is... it's pretty much the script minus the dialogue, where, hiccuping and burping, I don't know what I'm doing. It's pretty much like all the action lines in a script, where it's like, exterior store, night, cold, rain is falling on the window, and it's like all of that, but then once someone starts to talk, I'll type what they talk about in red, where it's just like, John comes into the store and asks Philip about, X, Y, and Z or whatever. They talk... blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But I'll write out all the action. And then I'll move on to the script, and then I'll just fill in the dialogue. So that's kind of my process. I work linearly. I don't jump around. I know some screenwriters, they'll write the end of their movie, and then they'll write a scene from the beginning and kind of stitch it together. I don't do that. I go in order. Otherwise, I get lost. But that's my process.
Yeah.
And again, I don't stick to that every single time. Sometimes I go straight from beat sheet to scriptment. Other times I do an outline instead of a beat sheet. Other times, it's kind of all over the place, but that's how I kind of categorize things. And that helps for me because kind of when I was starting out, kind of more high school, it was like I would get lost in like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Like, for planning out your script, because I'm one of those, again, I think we're similar in this way.
Yeah.
we have to know where we're going to write our story. Some people can just write not knowing what's going to happen, but we can't really relate to that.
I want to get to a thing.
Yeah. So
and it can be vague, but I need to know something about it.
And so I was always confused on how much I should plan. How do I plan it? Do I write it out as kind of like more of a treatment document? Should I write it out as a scriptment? Should I write it out as this? And I didn't know how to do it. And in the last few years, I kind of developed the system where I'm like, okay, I'm going to start with the beat sheet. And that way, because, if you're writing a scriptment and you get to a certain part in your script, maybe you say you write the scriptment up through Act 1.
Yeah.
You get to Act 2, and you kind of don't know what's going to happen. You're going to start typing things out, maybe like it's more of a beat sheet or more of an outline. And then you are left with this document that's a mishmash of, all three, where some parts are really fleshed out, other parts aren't fleshed out. And in my head, it was kind of easier to just break it down into processes where, okay, force yourself to write it out as simply as you can. That's the beat sheet. Okay, now force yourself to write out the plot as it progresses in more detail. That's the outline. Now force yourself to write all of the, headings, all the slug lines, all of the different actions, but no dialogue. Force yourself to write an entire document, just that. And then you can move on to the script itself.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I kind of developed that system, because breaking it down, again, I don't follow that every time, but that's how it helps me organize my thoughts of what any document I start is going to be.
And the more you do it, the more you can kind of jump around and change things.
Yeah.
Because you learn what you need and what you don't need. And some stories don't need as much in one step as I do another. So
I've jumped into scripts before and just gone through the whole thing. Now, I would say those are probably my weakest scripts, but they were still scripts nonetheless, and you can do it. I'm sure there's, I think Quentin Tarantino is one of those people where he just starts writing and he just lets the story come to him as it unfolds, and he kind of treats it like literature, and that's cool too.
Yeah.
I think he has an Oscar for screenplay writing. Not that that's you need an Oscar to be a good writer, but
well, I think what can kind of slow people down, I think I know I was guilty of this, was kind of you get so excited and you kind of hold up your idea with like, this is the best thing.
Yeah.
And you don't want to tarnish it. And so it gets really hard when you're in that first draft, and you're going through those first steps, and it's like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
I'm ruining my movie.
Yeah.
But I found when I was writing The Bell Rings, like I wrote that draft as fast as I possibly could. I was at a coffee shop every day, being that screenwriter writing at a coffee shop, which I never understood until I did it. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's incredible. Like, I zone in so much better there, mostly because I don't stand up a bunch, because when I'm writing at home, I just walk around a lot and I don't get anything done. But that helps so much in just knowing that, like, I'm just going to write this as fast as I can, and it doesn't matter how it turns out. And I think that was the most helpful thing for me, was just like, write. Like, don't worry about it. You're going to come back and clean all this up anyways. Everything's going to change. It doesn't matter.
I just finished a draft recently of something where I straight up did not write any dialogue for the third act and also some of the end of the second act, where it was like, oh my gosh, I am not feeling this. I'm not enjoying this, but I'm going to put this crap on the page just to get it on there so I can kind of have closure that, hey, I finished a draft. It's readable. It's terrible, but it's readable. And now I can move on to the next stage.
Yep.
And I still do that, where you just have to write garbage.
One of my in my screenwriting college class, that was something I did with my final, because I needed to get to a certain amount of pages. But I was like, oh my gosh, this sucks. Like, this movie's just like tanking on me. I had the coolest. It was this Western that I loved, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna. And I just vomited out like 5 pages that I knew were like the worst thing I'd ever written. I was like, this is just how it's gonna be. But it was fine. Yeah. I mean, didn't have to make the movie anyway, so it was all good.
Yeah. Some of the, I think for early people, or people early in their journey and kind of starting out with screenplay writing, it's you have to just finish it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's great to be inspired, but just write, and when the inspiration runs out, when you're not excited about your movie, it's really important to finish it fast.
Yeah.
Not good, finish it fast. Doesn't matter even if, like, what that looks like for you might be different. But for me, even if it's something like, I'm just going to write out an outline of what happens in the scene, instead of the full scene, I'll just write what happens. Just getting that, even that's helpful. Because again, when you do your second pass, you're going to clean everything up.
Yeah. Or third or fourth.
Yeah, yeah. The best way I would equate it to is like my process is like, where it's, going from beat sheet to script all the way through those 4 stages. It's like getting a chunk of like clay and kind of molding it more and more and more. And as you get more further along, you're going to start to get more detail in there. That's kind of how I think of it. So of course, if you're in I don't know anything about sculpting, but if you look at a sculptor, what they do with a hunk of clay in 5 minutes, of course it's not going to look like anything.
Yeah.
But they know what it's going to be, and so they keep, working at it. And then probably in, I don't know, a week or a couple hours or however long it takes to make a full sculpture, they have something that looks really cool. And that's all it really is. Just takes time, and each draft is a little pain in your neck, but just get through as many drafts as you can, as quick as you can.
I remember writing my first draft. The thought of coming back in as a second draft initially felt like sacrilege. It's like, what? Why would I undo my hard work here? Why am I doing this just to tear it apart? But yeah, it's like a process that's like was good.
Yeah. Do we answer any questions in that, or do we pose any questions?
I don't think we posed any.
Okay.
I think we just started talking about opening processes.
I guess so. Yeah.
Because that was our quick coverage of starting out.
Yeah. But I don't want to bore people with necessarily our, kind of vague stuff. I'm thinking practical stuff.
Yeah.
What's something that you've always struggled with, or something that you are like, how do you do this in a script? Or, you know what I mean? What trips
what are
people
questions
up? Yeah.
that trip me up, or people?
It could be either one. I don't know.
I could talk about. See, this is something we'd have 2 different approaches, and we kind of covered this, I guess. But we can jump in and talk specifically about this. Like, what do you do when you're writing your screenplay, you're making good progress, you're feeling it. I mean, this kind of ties back in, but you hit a total, like, a scene where you have no clue where to take it.
Oh yeah.
Like you're
That's
like,
a good question.
Like you have your beat sheet, you have your outline, you've gone through the steps, but I feel like that's kind of one of those inevitable things where you're going to hit a scene where it's like, I don't know where I'm going.
Well, this is what I say generally. If you have a problem with any specific scene, like later in your movie, it usually ties back to the beginning of your movie in some way. So what I do in those situations is I'll then pull up a set. Let's say I'm working on the script and I run into that. I will, I'll pull up, say, I'll work back to square one in a way. Like I'll pull up the beat sheet, I'll type it up. Nothing will probably change. I'll write the outline. That's probably where things will change. And I'll start working things around. Like, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example from like a movie everybody knows. Let's say in Star Wars, New Hope, Han doesn't go away after the battle. Like after they save Princess Leia. He sticks with them through the battle.
Sticks around on Yavin, yeah.
And then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to up the like how's like the climax of the movie doesn't have an oomph or anything. It's so weird or weak. And then you're in script form, you're writing that, and then you go back, you do your beat sheet, you do your outline, and you are outlining this, and you realize in that process, oh my gosh, if Han leaves after they save Princess Leia, that gives him an arc, that kind of brings the stakes up because now they don't have as much help as they need. And so then you realize that, Han's going to come back and he's going to save, the day. He's going to help save the day. Then what I do is I go back to the draft. Let's say that's draft 1 I was working on, the script. I finish it as it is, so I have some kind of, I'm like, okay, in this version, Han is with them the whole time. He helps Luke blow up the Death Star. It's kind of weak. It kind of sucks, blah, 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 blah. But I finish it. what that does is it gives me an end goal in sight because, okay, I know this draft sucks. I know this doesn't work, but I know the solution going into the second draft. So that's what I do in those situations, which is kind of like kind of thinking ahead. I stop work on the current draft. I think about how I'm going to fix it. And then I go back to the first draft and I finish it how it is.
Nice.
Which is, I don't know, that might be a little convoluted for some people.
I agree though. A lot of issues do generally come in. Your foundation is where everything is set. I like, if some people may have heard this, some people may not have. There's the story clock method that I've seen people start to use more and more. There's a filmmaker, Seth Worley, who kind of has a company called Plot Devices that uses this. And I really like it. It's kind of one of the first visual ways I saw it, but it's where they take the timeline of your movie and make it into a circle. And it's, the movie starts at 12 o'clock at the top and it moves around the clock. And they'll have these little tick marks. You can look up a PDF of this or an image, but they'll like have you put beats and moments of whatever ideas you have for your movie, and you can sprawl those out over the timeline, and you can find if there's a gap where there's something should happen but there's nothing there, you can reference other like corresponding moments in the clock that are like adjacent to that, and those help you like draw out like, oh, I set this thing up here, maybe here and the clock is where I should be paying off that setup or following back up with that. And I think that's a cool way to visualize that. That's just how I am. I'm a pretty visual learner, so having that way of like referencing. I know listening on a podcast, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Look up Plot Devices.
It looks like a circle. It looks like a clock.
It's a circle.
Take your timeline of a movie, a line, and turn it into a circle.
Maybe I did a better job explaining it than I gave myself credit. But if you're a visual learner, I think that's helpful, and that kind of helped me realize like I'm not just pulling. You have to just pull answers or beats out of thin air. Like look at what you have so far. Look at what's missing, what support structure is missing in your script, and kind of extrapolate from itself, so it's not just like pulling random things out of thin air and trying to make a cohesive story.
Yeah.
I don't use that process a ton, but I more or less just have that in my head now.
Yeah.
And it helps me. Yeah.
What are other things that either you or other people that like get tripped up on in terms of when it comes to writing? Something that stops people from like going forward.
Like, I think most people start a script.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of any filmmaker, people who are into film I know who haven't started a script. People who have finished feature scripts, I know a lot fewer of. Yeah,
and we kind of referenced this earlier because of the second act.
Yeah.
That transition from the first act to the second act is really hard for people.
Pain in the butt.
So, it's always vague when it comes to screenwriting because every story is different. And not every story, needs to be a traditional 3-act structure.
But the middle of your movie is just a hard thing no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, and this is the best advice I can give for that. So, Act 1 is, simply put, the way I look at it is there's the normal world, then something happens, which is kind of disrupts this character's status quo. The character tries to, change that to get back to the status quo, and then something bigger happens, and they cannot go back. They have to go forward into the story. They have to go forward, and they're doing this to get back to the status quo. But it's like, it's the moment when in Lord of the Rings where Bilbo sets off in his journey with Sam and Gandalf. Well, Gandalf.
Frodo.
Yeah. Oh, did I say Sam?
You said Bilbo.
Bilbo. Well, that works too. It's the moment when Bilbo wakes up and he goes with the dwarves.
Yeah.
Frodo goes with Sam to, walk to the
Mountain of Doom.
Yeah, Mountain of Doom.
The doomed mountain.
It's the moment when Ferris and Cameron from Ferris Bueller, they like finally hook up and they're like, okay, we're going to go out and steal my dad's car.
Yeah.
It's the big moment that makes, everything change. That's the end of Act 1, generally. Again, every story's different, so your mileage may vary on this advice. So, from that point on, from about the end of Act 1 to the midway point, the character is going to struggle and struggle to get back to square one, essentially. They want to get back to the status quo. Everything that, well, you as the writer, you have to think about, how do I make life worse for my main character? And then do that. What's the worst possible thing that could happen? And keep doing that over and over and over again.
Ideally different horrible things.
Yes.
But
I mean, you'll get to a point where, you know, the midway point is generally, you know, usually the characters have to learn something.
yeah.
They are, the reason that things are so hard is because they're not learning their, you know, I'm doing a really bad paraphrasing of Craig Mason's theory on screenwriting.
Oh, yeah.
Script Notes, episode 403. Everyone go listen to that.
That's the better screenwriting podcast you should be listening
Yes,
to right now.
listen to Script Notes. Skip this entire one. Just listen to Script Notes, honestly. But essentially, if you want our kind of take on it, you know, the way you get through Act 2 is thinking of every horrible thing that could happen to your character. What is the one thing your character doesn't want to have happen? And then just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until they are broken. They have nothing left.
Twist the knife.
There's more nuance to that. Of course, you know, I mentioned the lesson. Your characters usually have to learn a lesson by the end of it. There's a dynamic to that. And there's characters that can kind of embody that thing, that theme, that central dramatic question that you're posing your main character. Because your character isn't going to listen. It doesn't want to listen. And every single time they kind of open themselves up to the idea of change, you make things worse, and it screws everything up. And keep doing that and doing that and doing that.
Yeah.
And once your character finally has nothing and is broken, that's the low point in your movie. That's when, you know, their beliefs are gone. They tried doing things their old way, doesn't work. They tried doing it the new way, kind of, and it didn't work. And they tried doing it the new way but their heart wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Once your character believes in the new way and decides to fully commit themselves to it, the new way, kind of, they totally are in it, they believe in it, that's when the climax happens. That's how they succeed in the end. Obviously, you'll probably want to tempt them with something in the climax, but that's vaguely how you get from Act 1 to end of Act 3. Don't, you know, just listen to, I'm telling people, listen to Script Notes episode 403. It is the best screenwriting advice I've ever heard about how to break down, you know, a character and kind of break a screenplay down, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's my terrible, vague Script Notes version, or not Script Notes, what's it called? Spark Notes version of that. But
essentially, don't listen to us. Listen to the other guy.
Don't listen to us. Seriously, if you want to become a better screenwriter, listen to that episode of Script Notes.
Yeah.
If your goal is to write traditional Hollywood 3-act structures, watch that episode. But the middles are tough. Middles of your movie are really tough in general.
I agree.
And you're not alone.
I think what got me through Bell Rings' second act, again, was having a good outline. And I think it's good. Like, I'm glad that I had you walking me through it.
Yeah.
But I think even if you're a screenwriter, but you're the only person who's interested in it, still getting feedback and like kind of running things through other people.
Yeah.
I think that kind of gets you out of your head. And it's the same thing where if you show someone a video you've worked on and they're watching it with you, you view that movie completely differently than how you viewed it when you were watching it on your own.
Yeah.
So working with someone through a screenplay that same way, I think kind of opens you up and lets you kind of see your own work and see any mistakes or things you'd want to change within that in a different way. Then it's not just you kind of staring point blank at this thing.
Yeah.
And I think that really got me through Bell Rings, because then I was so set up in my outlining to go into Act 2, and I felt pretty like motivated to get into it.
I think, having those goal points is really helpful because you kind of, again, it's kind of like starting vague and big with your hunk of clay and just getting finer and finer and finer, because at the bare minimum, your story should have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 big things that happen. Well, okay, not even That's probably not as helpful. Everyone knows the story's about beginning, middle, end.
Yeah.
Let's say you have your beginning, middle, end, but where do you take it from there? At the bare minimum, what's the normal world, and then what happens to change that?
Mm-hmm.
Then what happens during that to kind of break your character, and then how does your character overcome that?
Yeah.
They break your story down as simply just set those little goalposts along the way, and kind of fill in the blanks. Just fill it in a little bit more, add a little bit more detail. It's going to help you out.
Yeah.
I'm just adding in that detail. That is, of course, if you are someone who doesn't just jump right in the script and likes to feel the journey or whatever.
Yeah.
Which is a totally valid way to do it. But that's
100%.
I can't relate to that personally.
Yeah.
I can't imagine just jumping into a script not knowing where things are going. What are other things that people get tripped on? I mean, the second act is probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And if you have more questions about this stuff, feel free to leave a comment. We might do a follow-up episode.
We'll never be done talking about screenwriting. In some way or form, we'll always come back around to this topic.
And again, not experts, but
people who have done it.
We have done it, and this is just our take on it right now because it's always ever changing. Second act is always tricky for people.
All right, what about, this is something different, because everyone always talks about the 3-act structure.
Yeah.
What if you're trying to write something that totally is breaking the mold? Like if you're going into abstract land.
Yeah. I would treat your movie then like, it's kind of, you want to think about mood and effect. I'm a big advocate for, there's no good and bad when it comes to art. It's cause and effect. So how do you want the audience to feel at this moment or this moment? It's kind of tricky. I guess looking at an example that's kind of a little more tangible. Like if I wanted to script House, for instance.
Yeah.
If I wanted to make House and script that, your movie House.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, it's a 2-act movie. Because I know I have these ideas for the scene for this guy that's wandering around his house, and he's kind of, weird things are happening. Maybe he sees a dog, and then the dog goes missing, and then there's something in the house with him, and he's just kind of wandering around. It's kind of vague and very flowy.
Yeah.
I take it like, okay, each of those things I know I can make interesting in about 5 to 10 minutes. Each of those things that will occupy enough. Now, of course, I'm thinking as a filmmaker, from that point. But it also works for screenwriting. I know that I can stretch out those things over, each of them will take about 10 pages or so. Maybe the first 10 pages is the man just wandering the house with the lighter. Everything's kind of normal. Everything's weird. And then every 10 pages, something new is going to happen. Yeah. But then after, 3 or 4 things that happen, you're left with, well, how do I up the ante from here? I'm going to make a big change.
Yeah.
And then, I'll have him meet himself, and then he'll go under a blanket. Then he'll be in a completely new space. Then I know, oh my gosh, I'm in act 2. So this is a 2-act movie. And then in that second act, it's kind of a parallel of the first half of the movie, where every 10 pages, something weird and freaky is going to happen. And it's going to culminate in the weirdest, most freakiest thing, in which it'll take you through the beginning of the movie and all that kind of thing. That would be my approach to outlining something like House.
Yeah.
October was different too, because that wasn't a 3-act structure.
Yeah.
That was just
3 stories.
It was 3 stories, but it was going to be, okay, we're going to show each day of October.
Yeah.
So I have 31 scenes, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Some of those days occupied multiple scenes. Some of those days were just one little scene or part of a montage. So October would be, how it's written was pretty much what you see on screen, where, that's what you saw. Whereas it was structured based on the days, not so much 3 acts necessarily.
31-act movie.
31-act movie, yeah. What was your question?
Well, I was talking about just
what do you do?
How do you break that down? Is there a way, or is it just kind of you flow with it?
Based on feeling, I think.
Yeah.
How do you want your audience to feel at any given point? And also, what I love, this is advice from Untitled Chapter, who made Last Days of Childhood. what he said, I've heard him say before, is to tell a good story, all you need is something interesting to happen, and that'll engage people. So like, and he's right, like to an extent. Well, not even to like that. That is like absolutely what makes like a good movie. I think is like something interesting is going to happen, and it'll keep you engaged.
Yeah.
Whether that thing is really elaborate and crazy, like something like I don't know, like El Topo or something wild like that, or if it's like way more subdued and subtle, like something like Pig with Nick Cage, where something interesting is happening every, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. I mean, every movie's going to have a different pulse and rhythm to it, and tempo. But, you just have to have something interesting happening at a consistent rate.
Yeah.
And ideally, what's interesting is getting kind of bigger and bigger and bigger, or the stakes are getting higher, I guess.
Yeah.
Until then it stops. Bell rings, or not bell ring. House is a good example of that.
Yeah. And House didn't have a screenplay. It would have been interesting to see what the screenplay of that would look like, though.
Yeah.
For sure.
Speaking of weird script, I have the script done. I got Under the Skin.
Oh, that came to mind. I was going to ask about that off podcast.
Very, very interesting to read it, because Under the Skin is a very abstract kind of movie.
I need to rewatch
and to see how they wrote it was really kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot more conventional stuff in there.
I might borrow that off you sometime.
You might, I mean, totally tell that they just like, okay, we're taking this, we're just throwing it out the window. But
yeah.
It's still kind of treated as a literature.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because you're taught in film school, they show you like the way to write a traditional script, and they make it seem like it's gospel.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to get in and you're a nobody in the industry, this is how you do it. But it's so cool to see how quickly like no one who's writing in Hollywood cares about script.
Yes, it is. Okay, so this is true. So film schools teach the structure or the format of screenplay, because there used to be, this was a really common job, script readers. And those script readers have to read hundreds of scripts, and it was an easy excuse for them not to read a script.
Yeah.
Where it's like you can toss it in the trash because, it didn't format the title correctly. You just take a look at it. Oh my gosh, throw it in the trash.
These headers are one font too small.
But anyone above the script reader doesn't really follow those rules. Like A Quiet Place,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
That movie totally doesn't have any like traditional format whatsoever, and it was turned into
a very successful feature.
Very successful feature film. I think it had a budget of, I would guess, $50 to $70 million.
Yeah, probably.
Like very, and it's a pretty well liked movie. Most people. I mean, that's proof right there. You don't need structure, and people in Hollywood are like averse to structure. Like Quentin Tarantino, he's another guy. Not to, keep going back to like the same few names over and over, but if you read his scripts, no one writes a script like that.
No.
But, because he does what he does so well, he can get away with it and get movies made. And that's not to say you should write like Tarantino. Do not do that at all. But find what makes your writing unique and interesting and do that.
And also what makes it work best for you.
Yeah.
If you need to write in the traditional Hollywood way to make your script, do it. If you need to go totally against that, do it.
Yeah.
As long as if it makes the thing you want to make, then you're doing it the right way.
I'm assuming anyone listening to this is a writer/director. So, I mean, if you're a screenwriter, this doesn't pertain to you. This doesn't relate to you as much, but, all that you need to know as a script writer/director, do you know what's going on the page? And when you communicate this to your crew, cast, whoever, will they understand what's going on the page? At the end of the day, that's really all that's important.
Yes.
A script could be, like you said, it could be a series of outlines. That's what it was for Zach and I, or Zach, you and I for Wild Boys. It was like we wrote down, here's a sentence of what happens in these scenes, and we're just going to roll with it.
Yep.
And that was it. We didn't write a script, but in a way that kind of was our script to an extent. Or rather, that was our outline, and we just wrote on the fly during filming. There's no wrong way to write as long as, I don't know, you just put pen to paper and just create something. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's a good place, I think, to end this discussion. And it is just this discussion. We will definitely, if you have questions again.
well, if I could add one thing,
No, you can't.
one little hot take.
Nope. Just
No?
kidding. Absolutely.
I I know this is going to be hypocritical, but I don't think. Again, the script. You're making a movie.
Mm-hmm.
You're not making a good script.
Yeah.
You do not need a good script to make a good movie. Like, your movie is cinema. Cinema has its own vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
It's a visual language beyond words. So I think, to a certain extent, if your script should not be able to convey everything that you want to do.
Yeah.
To an extent, I think the script is the least important part, one of the least important parts of filmmaking. I also think that the reliance on an importance of quote unquote story and scripts and screenplays in filmmaking, it's been a detriment to the medium. And start thinking about films beyond just a story or a script. Start thinking about it as, like, in terms of the movie itself and the visual language of cinema. And that's my closing thought. Because I could not, I'm now in the stage of, like, I cannot, like, talk about screenplay writing without putting up huge, asterisks at the end of, like, actually, but also at the same time, this is all useless and meaningless. Like, screenplays kind of BS.
Yeah.
I kind of don't like screenplays, but they're
Sometimes you got to do it.
sometimes you got yeah. That's the one asterisk I got to put in there
That's fair.
before we.
No, that's
move
good.
on.
I'm glad we put that in. That's important. I agree.
If you would like me to elaborate on that in another episode, let me know, because I would be happy to.
Yes. Maybe that'll be a follow-up.
Yeah.
But again, if you want to know more about screenwriting, if there's a question you have, we might not have the answer, but we'll be happy to talk about it. And maybe something we'll say will help you along in the process of your screenwriting journey. Do we want to talk a bit about what we've been watching?
Yeah, let's or do we usually do?
We do watching and then we do updates, if I remember right.
Are you sure?
All right, let's talk about updates.
Well, I don't know. Like, no, I don't know.
Now I don't know either. Now I'm self-conscious about it. Look what you've done.
Know.
I've only been watching Community a little bit. I haven't watched anything else in the last week except for Book of Boba Fett last week. So it's not. Which has been pretty dope.
Yeah, last episode was pretty good. I guess if you're listening to this is the Monday before episode
6.
6.
Yeah, because last one was 5.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the new one is out. The new one is out.
The new one's
6
out.
is out.
We haven't seen that yet.
We haven't seen that. We're not referring to that. We're referring to episode 5.
You know the one.
Do you have predictions for episode 6? Spoilers for anyone who doesn't want to listen to.
I have, like, man, I don't know, because I feel like they go a million ways. I think we have to see Baby Yoda in this one. That or he's gonna try and get out there, but the Pikes are going to intercept him. And he's going to be like, oh, these guys are causing a problem. I'm trying to go see my Baby Yoda. And so he's going to go help Boba real quick. And then he'll be like, I got to go do a thing. And then he'll go, that'll carry us over into Mando 3.
Every single time they've set something up, they've always delivered.
Yeah, right away.
Like, Ahsoka was set up in the episode prior to her showing up.
I know.
And then she showed up right away. Same thing with Mando.
Yeah.
At the end of this one, I've seen it like 3 times. Mando says, like, this one's on the house, like, but first I have to see a little friend or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So he says, but first. So I think...
Actually, it's either he's going to or he's going to try to get there, because I'm trying to see how they're going to rope it back. Because if they go see Baby Yoda, I don't see how it ties back to Book of Boba Fett. It just becomes Mando Season 3.
To an extent, I agree, but I also think, like, Luke training Mando, like, how to use the Darksaber.
I didn't think about that.
And then he's like, okay, I've checked. Like, he's going to give Grogu this whatever he
Could
made.
you imagine Luke going with Mando to Mandalore?
That would be great, cool.
That's
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be pretty dope.
I feel like it will be Luke. Obviously, he's going to see Grogu.
Yes.
He's got to. I think...
How
does it tie back to Boba? Because the big bad is not the Pikes, I don't think. The Pikes are not the bad guys. Because when the Hutts declined to take Jabba's palace, they were scared of something else.
Yeah.
I think it might be. No, this is tinfoil hat. This isn't logical necessarily. This is kind of almost partially what I would love to see.
Yeah.
I would love for it to be. It's Kira from the Solo movie.
Oh, that'd be dope.
Who had been trained by Darth Maul. Who is now Force sensitive.
Yeah.
And she is now like kind of a criminal underworld /
she's a
Force
boss.
user.
Yeah.
She's a boss. And she fights, and Mando so I think if that's the bad that I would love for happen, that is a possibility, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
If that's a possibility, then him going to Luke, getting a little more training, and then going back to Boba. Like it could be simply like he trains with him for a little bit, then he and he's like, I'll be back. And then he
it's
goes,
like what Luke does in 5.
Exactly. He trains with Luke for a little bit. He leaves.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll be back though. Fights with Boba, and that way when Mando's fighting,
he's good. Yeah.
Well, the fact if he dies before he goes to see Baby Grogu again, that would crush people. Technically, Mando is not a Mandalorian anymore.
No.
Din was stripped of his Mandalorian rank. Now, of course, they gave him an out, so I guess he's got to go to the pools of Mandalore.
He's got to go to the
become
caves.
a Mandalorian again.
Yeah.
But
we're going to Mandalore.
what if Grogu becomes the Mandalorian? You know what I mean? Mandalorian is just a title. That's not really
He's a foundling.
Yeah, that's not
He's
really
an official foundling.
I mean, this is just wild speculation.
We're just going all over the place.
We're having fun
reeling
with
us back in.
Yeah. But
That's it. That's all I've watched.
yeah, Boba Fett. I like that show a lot.
It's pretty dope.
I really like it.
I'm into it.
I'm still watching the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes. I just started the Return of the King special features.
Nice.
Well, I think I'm on the disc 2 of the appendices, so I still have to watch the documentary, and then I'll move on to the Hobbit behind the scenes. Your light just died.
That light died.
Well,
I was kind of expecting it to happen.
We got a good, hour or so.
Yeah.
Hour and a half out of that.
That's it.
Did you charge it since we filmed?
No.
Yeah, then that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
No, wait, what was I saying?
Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett.
Lord of the Rings behind the scenes is what I've been watching. I started to watch The Matrix the other day.
The new one or the OG?
The old one, because I've only ever seen the original.
The first one?
One time.
Oh.
And I was like, I kind of watch it, but then I
watched the whole trilogy one time.
It was like at a point where I was like, when I was watching it, I couldn't stop thinking about, but I want to see how they did the Uruk-hai. So I turned it off, and I was like, I can't focus on anything but the Lord of the Rings behind the scenes. So I started it. I really like the Wachowskis and their movies, so I really enjoyed The Matrix.
Nice.
Rewatching that, but I got like 10 minutes in. Other than that,
Peter Jackson called you home.
I know. I mean, he's why I felt those are like comfort show, like something to watch for me. I liked it. Other than starting The Matrix a little bit, I watched Alice in Wonderland, the OG.
Oh, the animated one?
Cartoon, yeah.
Nice.
Disney cartoon. Pretty fun stuff.
Old school.
I didn't talk about this last time, but I had seen it. I saw Scream 5 last week. Yeah, and I totally slipped my mind that I saw that.
Oh.
I thought it was fun.
Nice.
A good time.
I haven't seen it. I haven't watched, I think I've only seen the first 2 Screams.
Yeah.
So I don't know if, I haven't seen anything else.
I'm a pretty big fan of those movies. Those are like, they're just good horror fun. Like if you like meta stuff and all that.
Yeah.
The new one was, it was good. I liked it. I think my rankings would still be like, I would say like Scream 1 is my favorite. And then Scream 4 is probably my second best. Mm-hmm. Scream 5 is maybe after that or so. I don't know.
Middle of the pack.
Good middle. I like it more. I mean, I love all the Scream movies. Mm-hmm. I definitely like it more than 2 and 3. Well, do I? I don't know. They're so equal. Yeah. I know for sure that my top one is the first one, and then Scream 4. Those are my top 2 for sure.
Okay.
After that, they're kind of all even for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Scream 5. It was pretty good.
Nice.
I liked it. You've only seen the first 2?
Only seen the first 2.
Yeah. Well, pretty good. There's some get
around to them.
Yeah. Yeah. yeah, that's all I've seen. I haven't been watching a whole lot other
Yeah.
than Lord of the Rings behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because we've been busy working.
Yeah, making some stuff over here. We shot a project
Yes.
this weekend.
Yes, we did.
I don't know how specific I want to be with it.
We talked about it last time. We said we
did.
may or may not be shooting something. We shot the thing. It's done. It's editing. It's turning out really cool.
It's going to be a fun project once it drops.
Not at liberty to say. I'm going to leave that up to the person
who co-collaborator
who like put the nugget idea in our head, who invited us to create.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, if you go to our Instagram, you can see a picture from what we were doing. I just realized. Go to our Instagram, you'll see a picture.
Like it, share it.
Yeah. Try to guess what we did.
Yeah.
But we did something. Production is done. Now we're in post-production. It's going to be finished soon, and people will see it.
People will see it soon, this month, hopefully.
Wait, I have to check
hopefully it's this month.
The thing. Let's see what this person said. We're keeping it vague.
Painfully vague.
Yes.
Like annoyingly vague.
Let's see. Oh wait, the dates are in the attachment. Okay.
Thanks for sticking around, whoever's listening through all that.
Okay, yes, end of February.
Yeah.
End of February is when
you will be
people
able to
will be able to see this at some point. We have to turn our thing in. Well, okay, now I'm getting a little too much. Never mind. You will see it soon.
You'll see it.
You'll see it soon.
Yeah.
But still, I'm editing. I'm primarily doing that one.
Yeah.
You're doing.
I'm working on Bell Rings.
Bell Rings.
Yeah.
What's the? Can you share the not update but kind of update for the people?
I mean, the update but not update is
Yeah.
just that I want to show Jordan the full rough cut next week.
Oh, yeah.
When we record on Monday.
Oh yeah.
So
I'm excited.
he's all hot and bothered over there, ready to see the movie.
This is like, I don't know, like Tom Hardy telling you like, hey, Chris Nolan's gonna let me watch a rough cut of his new movie. And you're just like, that gives me nothing. Like, I know, I just wanted to share that with you.
That's all.
Yeah. Fun stuff's coming. I think that's probably a good place to end it.
I think so.
Yeah.
So this is the Doom Productions podcast. If you like what you hear and you want to listen to more, check out our past episodes. There's a playlist linked right down below. If you want to watch other videos we've made, check them out on our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify, there's a link you can check out above. That'll take you right there. We make videos about filmmaking, and we also make feature films that you can watch on our channel for free. And if you want to support our videos and our podcast more, we have a merch store that you can also check out. That's in the link below or above if you're on Spotify or YouTube. So buy some shirts there. We got some cool t-shirts, posters, hoodies, all the cool merch stuff that you can expect from a cool place like Doom Productions. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. We've enjoyed this time spending with you guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.